welcome to Connections for Life. I'm coming live to you on location from the Philadelphia, outside the Philadelphia arena here. It's kind of crazy. There's a mob waiting to get to see somebody. Who could that be, Chad?
It's Gritty Kuvo over here with the funny eyes.
Gritty Kuvo. I'm Joe Surratt, and I can't.
You do not support this message?
Actually, you look the same with or without that graphic. It's uncanny.
It's rude. That is rude.
Gritty Kuvo? Chad Kuvo.
Thanks, guys.
What's going on? How is everybody?
I'm exhausted. We just recorded with Jim and James before this, and James made a comment that we woke Ted up because I keep yawning, man. I didn't get in until late last night. I got in at like 1:30.
Where are you now?
I was in Pittsburgh all weekend for basketball, and then I drove 5 hours home, took a bunch of kids home, got to bed about 1:30, 2 o'clock, and had to be on the road by 7:30 this morning to get up here to Buffalo. So, and now I'm actually in my Chevy Silverado. I'm in my truck.
Nice. I'm going to be passing you later on my way to Pittsburgh. So I think that's cool though. I think it's cool that we're getting out. Last week I got to go to New Jersey and I was down in Maryland. So, hey.
Does anybody choose to go to New Jersey unless they go to the shore?
I did.
Stop it.
That was a dump on Jersey.
I lived in Pennsylvania my whole life. I just really wanted New Jersey to be the parking lot for the shore for Pennsylvania. That's all.
Oh my gosh. There's going to be some kickback on that. All of our
I hope so. Anybody?
I hope there's let's get a couple of shots. You pull Gritty in. That's like a direct knock on the Devils. Like it's a whole thing you got going on.
Yeah. Vicious cycle you got going.
Everybody has a role, Ted. Everybody has a role.
So, but that's usually my role to pull the shots, and then you guys ridicule me and tag team me. So,
well, you know
Joe,
what?
Let's jump.
I was throwing it over to Kubo today with his New Jersey bashing. So,
all right. And by the way, you can't have that Bud Light sponsor in the background like that. They haven't given us any money. There we go.
Or Certa Pro painters. You need to cover them up too. Now you're sweaty and gross. Now we got that going on. This show is off the rails. All right, this
is phenomenal.
Do we have any utility updates? Anybody have anything?
No. Honestly,
I'm just trying to figure out how I'm gonna blank that out.
You know what's happening? Honestly, is stuff starting to open back up. Have you guys noticed this? That you're getting less and less of a barrage for the email invites to trade show, like the virtual trade shows or the virtual seminars and all that stuff. I've hit like a slow. There was a while where I was getting one or two or three.
They were from me. That's
why. My emails have definitely started to plummet, but I just think that's a sign of they're trying to get rid of me. So I think they're slowly phasing me out one email at a time. Maybe I'll move to Jersey.
So you're already in New York.
I wanted to touch base on one thing before we move into our guest. For those of you that follow me on LinkedIn, you probably noticed that I inundate you with quotes. I'm really big on quotes, and I thought it'd be cool to bring one to the show every week. So I have one for this week if you guys will allow me to talk about it.
Nope, sorry, you're gonna have to wait till next week.
All right, well, so we'll do it next week.
And I'm the quote guy, so don't try to steal my thing.
You can be a part of it. I thought it'd be neat to be able.
You're gonna have to do something then, though, Ted. Like get a quote.
Yeah, right. So I'll handle it. So this one's from, I believe, I'm probably pronouncing this wrong. It's Didinsky. I don't know. It was on the.
Yeah, he's definitely wrong.
Probably, but it says
a quote from a guy that you can't pronounce his last name.
I can't pronounce a lot of people's last names. Were you on the expo? That was a debacle.
You're lucky he gets Surratt and Kubo right.
Right. I'm good with first names. Last names I cannot be held responsible for. So anyways, actually that could be his first name. I don't even know. I have no idea. Anyways, I like the quote.
I snorted. I snorted.
I heard you. I'm trying to overlook it. Between Chad's armpits, the New Jersey bashing, and your snorting, we have just fallen apart.
This might be my favorite episode.
But this one is be there for others and never leave yourself behind. And I think there's a lot of gain to get from that because I think a lot of people do things like completely selflessly, but they forget about themselves and taking care of themselves. And it's such an important part of it. You can't be good for anybody else if you're not good for yourself.
That is true.
And I don't know. I like that one. So I want to put that one out there. Didinsky or I don't know. Close enough. Fair enough. Google it, look it up. It's there.
That plays on something though, Joe, just to kind of walk with that a little bit. it's I have a pretty strong faith base, and one of the phrases that was don't be so heavenly bound that you're no earthly good. What good is it to say? What good is it to get everybody in the world saved and lose your own soul in the process? Like that's pretty. That they tie together, and
Yeah,
again,
no,
the
for
neurons
sure.
are touching.
That's
pretty awesome, man. That's pretty awesome.
So, anyways, I wanted to put that one out there. Now we can bring on our guest of the week.
So this week we have Liz Bowman, who's with the American Exploration and Production Council. Liz is the media director there, and she has a heck of an interesting background. She's been on Capitol Hill, working in different sectors and jobs and different things for about the last 15 years. She worked for actually the electrical side of the trade councils, essentially, as you would. She worked on the electric side, but then she also worked for almost 2 years for Senator Joni Ernst as her communication director, which I think is pretty neat. But what leads her into working with us is the American Exploration and Production Council, and she has some really, really, really good stuff to say, and some good outside of the box thinking, just in taking steps forward to educate a little more in natural gas and all things natural gas. So thought it was really interesting.
The one thing I want to say about this interview is, like, right in the beginning, I was on my cell phone and it was right in front of the camera. So I apologize to everybody for that. I had to answer a text. I normally don't, but I had to answer this.
Yeah, did you know that I texted? It's because he was in the hotel, and no, his phone literally looked like this.
I know.
Yeah, it was bad.
It was bad. I was trying not to bring any attention to it, but
no, I just want to point out my error. Liz, I apologize. It was one that I had to answer. I normally don't, but this one was vital to my existence.
I think you should apologize afterwards, and then everybody would have known they wouldn't have looked at it and probably wouldn't have said anything.
Oh, everybody's gonna notice.
Notice what? What are you talking about? What are they gonna notice?
Great job, Sarat. Good job. Well done.
Hey, no, on another note though, I want you guys to listen. All you viewers, really pay attention. We began this episode with quotes, and I think it was not tied to this unless Joe is some kind of savant. But Liz says a quote in there. Oh, jeez.
And the first name is Idiot.
All true.
All true. No argument. But Liz says a quote in the interview, and I remember I wrote it down because it was literally like, whoa, and it was about the natural gas industry. So I want everyone to listen for that, and then we'll talk about it in the outro here a little bit. So without further ado, welcome to Connections for Life, Liz Bowman.
Hello, Liz, and welcome to Connections.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Hi, Liz.
Hey, Liz, how are you?
Good to see y'all.
Cool. So I'm gonna start just because I normally do, so that's why I'm going to. But I want to just kind of talk about what you do and how you got your start in such a kind of a cool, unique, I guess market or industry. I know when we first talked to you, I was like enamored with what you do, and I thought how wildly cool that was. And it's not something that you kind of like get a go on a monster.com search for. So just if you want to kind of tell us how that started.
Sure. So I think I should maybe first explain what it is that I do. And so I am the communications director, the head of communications for a small trade association in Washington, D.C. And so in that role, I'm responsible for being essentially the liaison between our organization and the media. And so I kind of am responsible for being kind of the go-between between the two. So whatever positions or policies that we come up with, it's then my responsibility to communicate them to the press, but ultimately to the public via the press, and then also kind of through other communications channels. So in terms of getting us started, it's kind of interesting, I guess, I don't know, it depends on how you look at it, but I went to Virginia Tech and I was a major in communications and political science. And then I kind of migrated up to Northern Virginia with everybody else that graduated from Virginia Tech and wasn't really sure what I was going to do. Did all sorts of kind of odd jobs. And essentially at some point roundabout ended up in a PR firm, which did a lot of public policy work and had a lot of trade associations as clients, including one of which was the American Coalition for Clean Coal Electricity, which represents the coal producers in the United States. And that was our largest client. And so that's kind of how I got my start in energy. But then ultimately, when it was kind of time to leave the trade association and do something else, one of the partners at the firm, his wife was the head of communications at a different trade association. that was also kind of in the energy space. And so I talked to her and then ended up going to work for her for a while in the trade association world. And so I've kind of been in the energy and the trade association space now for a while. So.
Oh, wow. Can I ask you kind of a follow-up question to that? When you left Virginia Tech and you ended up in Washington, like what was it getting out of college that you thought about doing? What was the goal? What did you want to do? Or were you kind of just wide open for opportunities?
I was pretty wide open, I guess. I mean, I don't know. I was one of those, like, there's a lot of people that I've talked to that were very intent on like, this is what I'm going to do. This is where I'm going to go. I'm not going to do anything less. And I was like, you're going to pay me. I mean, like, I will work hard and I will do a good job and I'll do the best that I can. And actually, like, before I ended up with that PR firm, and it's funny, but I replied to a job ad in a newspaper, which was like very novel.
Dating. Old school.
Yes. And I, in the CQ roll call, there was this newspaper and they had a job section and I replied to this job doing press, and I actually hadn't really done press prior to that. And so I remember meeting with this man him and his wife are now some of my mentors, my favorite people in the world. And they didn't want to hire me because I didn't have any government experience, but he told the rest of the folks there, like, this person comes from the private sector, she's willing to work hard, let's give her a chance. And I worked my ass off every single day in that job. I just came in and just hammered the phones and called the press like no other until I finally proved myself. And that was just kind of what I did. And then the funny thing is those folks, as I mentioned, are some of my biggest mentors now. And I would do anything for them just because they gave me that opportunity. So I moved up here not really knowing anyone. I didn't know anyone that worked in the government.
Wow.
No one did the job. I just did my best and worked.
Don't even
You
really
bet
know
on
what to
yourself.
expect.
You bet on yourself, and you found somebody who was willing to back you, and that's
Right.
pretty awesome story right there.
Yeah, right. So I kind of went from there. Yeah.
So Liz, I guess just for people that don't really know, what exactly is a trade association? Like, what do you guys do?
Right. That's a good question. And I think a lot of folks, especially, well, pretty much anyone outside DC doesn't really understand what a trade association is. And so the way that I describe it, and correct me if I'm wrong or I'm not doing this properly, but
We have no idea.
Yeah,
I don't think I can.
So you can tell us.
Yeah,
absolutely.
You don't know. Okay. But so you look at different companies that represent a particular product. And then, so for example, like Coke or Pepsi, right? That's their product. That's what they're pushing. But then you look at an industry, which is the entire American beverage industry. So they represent all of the different products. So a trade association is essentially an organization that represents an entire industry, not just a particular brand. So there's a trade association for the American beverage industry that represents Coke, Pepsi, all the different ones come together, and they advocate for the policies that are best for the entire industry. So not just what's best for Pepsi, but what's best for all of American beverages. So like on things, taxes, etc. So in the case of the American Exploration and Production Council, the trade association that I work for, we represent the interests of the large American upstream producers of oil and natural gas in the United States.
Wow. So literally pretty much every industry has a group that does what you do. Wow.
You would be surprised how many trade associations there are. There's a trade association for American florists. There's a trade association
that is unreal.
Yes, the chemical industry. There's one for the oil and gas industry, the coal industry, the renewable industry, pretty much almost every industry, the realtors, the restaurants.
Wow.
You name it, there's a trade association. And we're pretty much all in DC.
Crazy. So, I mean, you kind of talked about it briefly, but you specialize in like public affairs, media relations. Like that's your job. I think you did a great job explaining to us when we talked prior, kind of like what a normal day looks like for you. And what you do at work. Can you just kind of tell the viewers what that looks like? I mean, what does a normal day when you get there kind of consist of?
Sure. So I think it's an interesting question because the days are all the same and also completely different at the same time. So what I do is very much dependent on the news cycle. And so it's different than it used to be when I first started, where you would get up really early in the morning. And as the press person, the first thing you would do is read through the newspapers and try to figure out like what's being said, what's going on, and how do you fit into it. But now it's a 24-hour news cycle. And so my job kind of never stops. And so I'm constantly trying to figure out like what is the news that's happening today, but also what are we projecting to be covered later this week? What are the announcements that are coming? What do we fit in? How do we fit into that? Is there an opportunity for us to provide a voice? Is there an opportunity for us to provide background to reporters as they're developing those stories? And then also kind of how do we respond to the stuff that's coming out that's false or negative, and as quickly as we possibly can. So the benefit.
That sounds crazy.
It does.
It is. Yeah. It's a benefit and a curse because it's very exciting and it's constant. And then there's downtime, but then there's also just no predictability of it. So, and especially when you're working on regulations and laws, oftentimes those are dropped at the most times when they're trying to hide the news. So like on Christmas Eve.
You mean that happens? No.
It always happens. I remember the last time I didn't work on Christmas Eve or the day before Thanksgiving. And so it's hard, and it makes it a little bit of a hard lifestyle because there's no such thing as being off. It just doesn't exist. And you have to be willing to pull up your laptop and get on the phone at pretty much the drop of a hat. And if you're not willing to do that, I think that it makes your job really hard. But if you are willing to do it and you're able to work hard, there is a lot of opportunity for growth and success.
That's awesome.
I think it's also cool that you probably get to meet some really cool people.
I think it depends on your definition.
I just mean from political figures like congressmen and senators and people like that, because you're integrating with those people and having those communications and also news networks and journalists and things like that. Sure. You just must come across some really, interesting people that most of us see on television and are kind of larger than life.
Yes, I think to me, they're interesting folks, but I mean, they're not like.
I understand.
We're gonna don't make us edit this, Liz.
No.
That's above our pay grade.
So I guess let's work into what are some of the initiatives. Can you share some of the stuff you guys are working on at AXPC now? Just some of the things that you're chasing around every day, I guess, in the news.
Right. So in terms of initiatives, I mean, we're working on promoting all of the good environmental work that oil and gas companies do. I think that's one of the most important things right now, especially with this administration, which is very much focused on climate change. We are trying to promote all of the work that oil and gas companies are doing to actually reduce emissions and all of the success that they've had. And so that's one positive thing that we're doing. We're also trying to grow our network and making sure that we're now about to launch this new digital campaign to try to bring in some new followers to AXPC. But then we're also doing things like supporting the government fly-in, which we have coming up in the next month. And essentially what that is our government affairs shop. They work with the member companies that we have to bring in some of their executives, and then they schedule meetings with different members of Congress on the Hill to talk about all the things that oil and gas companies are doing and all the policies that are important to us, and also the policies that are being promoted that could potentially hurt us. So from the communication side, what I would do to support that effort is develop kind of messaging, talking points, fact sheets, and speeches along those lines that support the effort.
Support documentation and all that kind of stuff. Okay.
I think it's kind of cool that. I mean, we're in the fossil fuels oil and gas industry, and you kind of obviously are supporting that as part of your position and what your company does. I think it's unique because, I mean, we're kind of definitely in a situation where it gets a lot of bad press, right? Renewables is kind of like it's kind of like the thing that everybody wants to talk about, right? It's we got to get away from fossil fuels and go more to electric vehicles and solar and wind and all those things. I know this is kind of a question that we didn't talk about, but do you guys does it get adversarial between trade groups? Is it ever like that? No.
Well,
I feel like I would be adversarial.
You would definitely punch somebody.
I would.
100%. You'd be fist fighting in the parking lot.
So among trade associations, not so much. I mean, I think that we all understand our role. There's a lot of interesting ways that we can work together on things.
Of course.
Have a lot of crossover. I would say in my particular role, sometimes it is slightly adversarial between us and the press in terms of trying to make sure that we actually have a voice in their story and that they are trying to perspective. And so I get a little bit upset when people say that it's all bad press about oil and gas, because I try really hard to make sure that
I didn't mean it that way. What I meant
we can't take him anywhere. We can't take him anywhere.
No.
I 100% agree with you that it has to be a combined effort for the overall good for everybody. I get that. I just feel like that, and maybe I'm a little more sensitive. We're a little bit more sensitive to it because we are in the oil and gas industry. Right. That we get all, it's always, you know, for us, it's, are you involved in fracking? That's bad. People don't understand really. I think one of the keys and one of the things we try to accomplish is having really fact-based conversation about all the things that are good, that's good, that is happening, and all the things that have changed to be, you know, to keep emissions down, keep efficiencies improving, using a lot more fossil fuels with lower greenhouse gas rates. Like, there's a lot of awesome things that happen there. It's just sometimes that gets drowned out by the environmentalists, I feel like sometimes.
Oh, absolutely. And I don't disagree with that. I mean, it's just, so that's where it's my role, is to make sure that I'm doing the best that I can to make sure that we're at least getting our perspective out there. Because oil and gas produced in the United States is the safest and cleanest oil and gas produced anywhere in the world. So at this moment in time, what we're trying to do in our trade association is make sure that the elected officials and the policy leaders in the United States right now understand that they have a choice. Either they can support American oil and gas, or we can meet the demand from, you know, oil from the Middle East and natural gas from Russia. And that is not produced at the same standards that it's produced here. And then in addition to that, by having American energy, we are supporting American jobs. We are also making sure that we're protecting our energy security. And that's something that's talked about a lot, but it's a very important concept of making sure that our diplomats can go overseas with the American oil and gas industry, supporting them behind their backs so that they can have these diplomatic conversations, because we don't need to rely on other countries to produce the energy that we need to sustain our standards.
That's a great point. That's a great point. With that being said, where do you kind of see the future of the natural gas in the United States kind of going? Like, what's another 3, 5, 10 years look like to you?
Well, oil and gas isn't going anywhere. So as much as people want to talk about like,
Ted drops his laptop.
Yeah, I mean, we're all for an all of the above energy mix. I mean, it's important to diversify. But with that said, I mean, all projections show that oil and gas are going to continue to provide almost 50% of the world's energy demand, at least through 2040. So with that said, I mean, like I mentioned earlier, American oil and gas is the safest and cleanest in the world. And so we need to continue to support that industry. But oil and gas as a whole isn't going anywhere. I mean, the question for our leaders is, do they want American oil and gas producing the highest environment and safety in the world, or do they want oil from the Middle East and natural gas from Russia? And do we want to continue to reduce emissions here that has a global effect, or do we just want to outsource the emissions to other countries?
That is the best media answer. That was an amazing answer.
That was incredible.
Yes, it was.
Wow.
Well, I'm going to go now.
I'm so glad we recorded this. Great job. We're going to totally use that.
Seriously,
I think that's a good
really
elevator speech type of thing. You know, I think that a lot of people, you know, I always want to ask, and this kind of pairs with what you were just talking about. You know, since we are clean and safe in the United States, as you'd mentioned, do we, or maybe you don't know, but instead of, do we ever reach out to other organizations or other countries and try to help them with their efficiencies, their standards, so that they can help improve the actual emissions and actually improve the overall quality of the world? Is that something that happens, or are we kind of like siloed, you know, standard wise, country to country?
I mean, that's a great question. Different countries definitely have different standards. And so I know that there's, but I also know that there's a lot of organizations that work in like standards developing bodies in the United States that kind of coordinate and develop memorandums of understanding with standards bodies in other countries, because it is in our best interest, obviously, to reduce emissions globally, not just here in the United States. And so it's definitely something that happens, and it's something that we also advocate for as a trade association, is making sure that the technologies and the innovations that our companies are developing here in the United States are able to be shared and utilized by other countries around the world.
Right. Well,
it's increasing the use of natural gas. We want to increase the use of US LNG, et cetera, because all of that contributes to the goal.
You know, I was just thinking about it like in terms of like the Paris Accord, where you want to have multiple countries coming together for the greater good, and that's all really focused on renewables and things like that. I didn't know if there was like a thing like that goes on with oil and gas, that they're also sharing the same best practices, and it's something that is an information sharing. I do too. I don't know the answer to that. I was just kind of curious, but anyways, again, I wander off in conversation.
So, I mean, that's a really good question, and I think the one thing that I really want to underscore, especially this week, as you know, the administration goes and tries to negotiate particular terms of the Paris Agreement again. The United States currently has reduced emissions more than any other country in the Paris Agreement because of the fracking industry and the shale revolution that brought our country natural gas. And so that is something I just want to make sure that,
That's
is
awesome.
understood. As you
When
know.
we weren't in the Paris Accord.
Yeah.
When we weren't even in it. Part of it.
Yeah,
Oh,
parts
that's
of it.
wild. So Liz, I guess I give you the last question, and Joe, unless Joe throws one in there randomly.
Probably have another one at the
Yeah, you
end.
probably will.
Yeah.
You've done this. You, like Joe said earlier, you probably met some really cool people. But what I want to know is, like, what's one of your favorite achievements or milestones that you've dealt with since you've been doing this type of work?
Yeah, I mean, that's a tough question because it's real easy for me to sit here now and say, I have a great job. I love my boss. I love my coworkers. And so I feel like that's a success. But I've also had a lot of little and big failures along the way. And I think that that's really important. And I think that it's helped me learn. I'm also a little bit superstitious, so I don't really like to celebrate particular milestones or successes. But if there was one particular moment that I personally am really proud of was just watching President Trump sign the repeal of the Clean Power Plan at the EPA headquarters, surrounded by American coal miners.
That's
in
cool.
my opinion, and this is just my personal opinion, was the Clean Power Plan was a terrible policy that I fought against for years. And it was really gratifying to see that someone was actually listening and that real change is possible in the American political environment. And so
That's crazy. That's awesome.
That's a personal answer.
That's a great.
My organization, but
I like that.
That's phenomenal.
I just want to say, before Teddy does his closeout, I just want to say, thank you. Not just for coming on the show, but the tireless work you guys do to promote an industry that we all have to build lives around. And not just us, but millions and millions of other Americans, and being able to, I know that you probably, I'm very similar. I never process a win. I just move to the next thing that I have to do. And it's hard for me to take any, to celebrate those things. But I think that it's very important what you and your organization does in to keeping the message out there and working for what's best for not just the oil and gas industry, but for the United States and for our country. And I think that the organizations like yourself that are working behind the scenes get very little accolade. But I just want to say personally, from us three knuckleheads, thank you, because a lot of what you do directly impacts us.
That it does.
I'd like to say thank you for joining us on our show when you've never met any of us, never, our worlds were never interacted. I give my colleagues here kudos for being the ones to reach out and to do this, and for you coming onto the show.
We're
I know
in sales, Ted. We just keep asking. That's
just keep asking. We get told no for a living, and we live off the yeses. That's how we do it. So, Liz, thank you for joining us. We really appreciate your time, and we can't wait to see you again in the future.
Thank you for what you do.
But before you stop recording, there's one thing that I just want to say.
Pampa. Oh, we forgot to give you the opportunity to shameless plug. Sorry.
Well, no. It's not that. I really think it's very important that as we do what we do, that to thank each and every one of you for the work that you do in the oil and gas industry and for advocating for your jobs and for being proud of what you do. Because it's that pride and that hard work that we are able to then translate into our communications with these elected officials. And that's what we're really fighting for. And so I just also want to thank you all. And thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk about what we do here.
Of course. That's the American way, right?
Yes. So thanks.
Wow, Liz, that was a really, really cool interview. I think it was special to me just because, as I mentioned in the intro, you said a pretty special quote, but it was also cool because, like, you're like a lobbyist, and we would never, ever get to talk to you in our daily capacity.
Awesome.
So, but our industries are directly aligned. And then your quote that you mentioned in it, that Joe, what's the quote word for word?
Before we get to that, I will read it, but I want to say thank you. It took us a while to get Liz on the show because she's so incredibly busy. And she took her time and energy and effort to come on our show. And we really do appreciate that. I find it absolutely fascinating what she does and what so many people do for different industries that I didn't even understand or know really took place. So very unique job, really cool, super important. And thanks for coming on. We really, really did appreciate it. As far as the quote you're referring to, she said, we're the greatest industry that no one knows anything about. And wow, go ahead.
That's powerful though. Like, speaking of the natural gas industry, like
that's what we're trying to do.
That's what we're trying to do. Is we're trying to build awareness around it. We're trying, so it works on. It's a double entendre if I'm using that word correctly, because it's twofold.
Probably not.
And if it's not, somebody's going to fact check me and call me and leave a comment if I said it wrong.
It'll be Doug Stafford.
It will be Doug Stafford, 100%.
Darn it.
Or Callie. Or Callie.
Or my 7-year-old.
But seriously, so we're the greatest industry that no one knows anything about. That's twofold, because like people there's so many misconceptions and misnomers associated with the natural gas industry. Well, this is fracking, or this does this, or this does that. There's just misinformation.
So Teddy, how long? Teddy, how you've been with us for over 2 years now, right?
Yeah, I'm almost 3. It'll be 3.
So that's 3. So, but that was your first introduction into this industry. It's coming here, right? I mean, essentially,
100%.
And you really didn't know a whole lot about it I knew gigantic.
Nothing.
Yeah.
Nothing about this gigantic industry. And I had a whole bunch of misconceptions that I thought I knew something. Like what I thought I knew, I was like, I think I'm doing something. I don't, but in reality, so yes, I didn't, people don't know anything about that. And then on the other end of it, nobody talks about the natural gas industry. Like you were saying, nobody talks about how big it is, which would coincidentally line up with what time of the day, Chad?
Oh,
part of the show.
I think it's gas sack time with
gas. So with us speaking about the quote from Liz and it being how many people work in the natural gas industry, Joe?
Well, it's not just the natural gas industry, but I'm
know what I meant.
Summarize and say oil and gas. It's about 9.8 million jobs are directly or indirectly associated with the oil and gas industry, which makes up approximately 5.7% of total U.S. employment.
That's what I thought. I was going to guess right around.
So if you think about that, I mean, just the oil and gas industry alone, the one that no one really talks about, but kind of exists and happens in the background. I mean, I should say no one. The people that are in the industry talk about it all the time. But
the people that are against the industry. There's 2 people that talk about it: the ones that are in it and the ones that are against it.
Right, but exactly. I mean, that's 9.8 million jobs. So we just saw the other day about looking at going to renewables and trying new energy sectors. There's a lot of jobs to replace as we start to move into renewables and start going to more sustainable energy sources that I just want people to be aware of. Like, that's a lot of jobs. 5.6% of 5.7% of total U.S. employment.
That's
directly or indirectly involved in natural gas or oil and gas industry. So yeah, pretty cool. That's all I have for facts today. Unless you guys want more, I can write some.
No, we're all good. We're all good. Thanks.
I can't remember them as it is. Like, if you give me 2, I'm really not going to remember.
I might remember this one because we talked, like we planned and prepped a little bit for this. It was kind of cool.
So my original fact, because I do want to read it so we don't give it up, is it's just crazy. In 2009, the price per million BTUs was $3 US dollar per million of these was $3.89. Okay. In 2009. As of today, well, I don't know when, recently.
Not this morning.
It's $2.53.
Wow.
It's actually gone down.
That's because of
how many things in the world
production.
Efficiency. That's the efficiency.
No, it's also because of domestic production. Because we need so much
tremendously.
But how many industries or how many things can you think of since 2009 that cost less than they did in 2020?
Nothing. I don't know if there's anything.
Nothing.
Gas. Natural gas.
Go. Now I'll remember that too.
There you go. Yeah, well, there'll be a quiz in 3 weeks.
Wonderful.
I'm off that week.
Me too. I'm off on Friday, guys. So
we're recording Friday. You didn't know?
I'll be in the car.
Perfect. Your phone works clearly in the car. It's perfect.
Great connection. So that is actually a moving green screen in the back.
Great connection. So I don't know.
Hold on. Let me move the pillow behind me.
Yeah, exactly.
The sheet stays it straight. Yeah. There you go.
But no, I think it was a cool episode. I really enjoyed having Liz on, and I'd really like to talk to more people that are kind of on that side of the world.
It's pretty neat.
Maybe that'll lead to some more interesting conversations. I know we have a couple of pretty cool people coming up, some influencers and decision makers in the next couple of what are these called? Recordings. So
what episodes, you know?
Episodes, recordings.
Hey, how about the fact that, like, Joe, I'm going to get you a shirt that says influencer so you can wear it on the show, because we're trying to become influencers in the industry.
I like that. We should just wear shirts that say influencer.
Influencer. My kid has one. I stole the idea. I can't say I made that.
That's a great idea, though. I like it.
It is.
I came up with a cool T-shirt line the other day.
Oh boy.
No, seriously.
Yeah. What's Chet over under on this being like completely off the wall?
It's gonna be decent, I think. Let's just talk about it before it comes out all the way. I think it's gonna be decent. Yeah. It's probably gonna not be able to be done though. Most of the time okay, go ahead. It's
cool. I said it the other day in conversation and I went, man, that's a good thing to put on a T-shirt. You ready for it?
I am.
Live your reality.
Didn't Dan come up with that once?
Yeah,
I don't know.
I
think it came out of my mouth, and I thought it was my idea. If it's recycled, that's possible.
I think Dadanov or whoever the quote was from earlier might have said.
It was Dudinsky, not Brandon Dubinsky from the Dudinsky. We gotta go.
Oh, that's great.
One more.
All right,
time.
guys. All right.
Humbled.
Every episode. This is wonderful. Hey, we got great feedback today that these sections were the favorite part of the show. Come on, stop knocking it.
It's really scary.
It is. All right. So guys, remember, please like, click, subscribe,
share.
Leave a comment, Mr. Stafford. And you see if I used the word double entendre correctly. Don't know if I did. Sounded appropriate.
It's possible.
Can we try to remember to get Bree to put that up on the screen?
What?
The like, subscribe, share when Ted says it.
Yeah, we can write it down.
All right,
hey, Bree, if you're watching this while you're editing it, can you put that on the screen?
Please, because we need help. So
it's a tremendous amount.
Right. Without further ado, guys, we love you. We'll talk to you next week.
Thank you, guys.